Guys, I'm going to go through some of the principles today of what we do around shoulder reconditioning. And for anybody who's not familiar with that term or has heard it, this is what my interpretation of it is as to how we've now effectively built dynamic shoulders. We're going to frame this around an athletic population today. So how many of you guys generally work with athletic type people, sports people, CrossFitters? Just give me a show of hands so I know who I'm talking to. Beautiful. All right, this will land pretty nicely then, because that's pretty much all we do. We talk about like ideal clients. We do a lot of work in CrossFit. We do a lot of work in rugby. And then my ideal client are ex-rugby players who've now taken up CrossFit. Anyone know those people? Absolute carnage. All right, it's chaos when it comes to the shoulder. And it's a little bit about my story as well. So I'm going to show you a little bit around what the people that we deal with and work with have experienced. I'm going to show you what my story was as to how we formed dynamic shoulders. And the real key thing, I don't leave now when I tell you this, but I'm not going to talk about scapulothoracic joints and glenohumeral rhythms, and it's not that kind of talk today. But I'm going to tell you what we do and what we've evidenced as to how we get really, really good results with people who have typically had multiple failed attempts at rehabilitation previously, specifically in that athletic population, so see it through that lens. Let's talk about this concept of reconditioning. It's a phrase that I first heard from Bill Knowles. Anybody come across Bill, the knee guy in the States? Pretty much on everybody who's anybody's knee in the sports performance world. And he talks about this end-focused outcome. It's a more of a can-do type approach as opposed to what can't you do, which in some cases, and I'll tell you about my experience later, was my experience of shoulder rehabilitation. We're an integrated team, so we are combined physiotherapy and strength and conditioning. I obviously bring that S&C background. The experience that I've had around Paralympic sport was 4 cycles, was part of the British team in 2016. I love the complexity of Paralympic sport, which is probably why shoulders also ticks the boxes for me as well. What we've built has been strategically built around my failed attempts at rehabilitation, and I'll tell you that story in a few minutes. But also a bit of a critical review of how shoulder therapy is delivered. So hopefully some of this will ring true. I'm not going to guarantee that everything is going to be entirely comfortable, but that's the preface for the talk today. And what we're going to do is look at this concept of holding up a mirror to success. Well, what that means is to effectively look at oneself objectively. We're going to start our conversation today in a swamp in a corner of a fairy tale kingdom called Duloc, or Duloc. Cora and I had a discussion around the right pronunciation for that. But this is Shrek, as many of you will know. He's up and about, he's cleaning his teeth, doing the things that he's always done. It's the same thing in the morning. He comes up, his toothbrush, toothpaste, splash of water, goes to work. Same principle, same practice, day in, day out. But today, Shrek decides that he's going to do something a little bit different. He's compelled to see if the work that he's been doing is yielding the results that he's been hoping for. So he gives himself a little bit of a smile to see how it's been going. And he doesn't necessarily like what he sees. The challenge with this is when we're going to hold a mirror up to ourselves objectively, we're actually looking for the things that are going to make us a little bit uncomfortable. In the world of art, we might see that a painter might actually use a mirror to hold up the mirror to his piece of work so that he can see things from a different perspective and see mistakes which he might otherwise have often overlooked. In music, composers will listen to a piece of music in a different room to try and again gain that different perspective, speed it up, slow it down. And the question is, when we're in our practices on a day-to-day basis and we're working with our clients, we've got full caseloads, how much time do we take to take a step back, to stop and critically reflect on whether what we are doing is actually yielding the results that we are looking for? And this is largely the subject of Adam Grant's really good book. If you haven't read this, everyone read Think Again? Okay, perfect. One person, you're on my page. Grab a copy of this one. It's really easy to read. But Adam effectively talks about the power of knowing what you don't know. Now, one reflection when I put this slide deck together is that I haven't done Adam Grant any great favors with the slide order. But he'll forgive me because it was the perfect segue. So, one of the things that he talks about is that if knowledge is power, knowing what we don't know is wisdom. He goes on to say that a hallmark of wisdom is knowing when it is time to abandon some of your most treasured tools and some of the most cherished parts of your identity. He talks about acting like scientists. Now, for us in this room, that probably comes quite naturally, and they will often be predisposed to looking at things through a lens of looking at what can we critically evaluate. But he also goes on to say that it's not just acting with an open mind. We need to also then make sure that what we learn, our reflections, change our practices and the ways in which we operate. Because it's all very well just critically evaluating, but if we are always the person who's got it right and our practice is the best, we're never really kind of actually going through that scientific process that we would look for in any kind of like research-based endeavor. So to put that into a nutshell and to end my preface before we get into a little bit more of the detail, we need to be looking for more opportunities to be wrong so that we can be more right, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's go. I'm going to start this off with a bit of a patient's perspective because I want you to know that I've got some credibility to talk about these things. Now, I've put patients in inverted commas because those of you that work with an athletic population will know that these people are anything but patient, right? Timeline's never fast enough. When can I go back to the gym? I want to play again. So how we start to see these clients and how we manage them, we talk about as clients, but patients, effectively, we need to understand what they are thinking, what they are going through, and what their priorities are. Now, I started playing rugby when I was 10 years old. You can look at me and go, well, that was a bad idea, because I haven't exactly got the stature for it. But I first dislocated my shoulder when I was 19 years old. We were on rugby tour at the time. We were drifting across in defense. I throw my arm out for a tackle. Guy cuts back on the inside and blows through my shoulder and dislocates it. I hit the ground. Shoulder goes back into place. We're on tour, right? So I've got two options now. Go to A&E by myself, 4 hours on my own, or go to the pub with the boys. Second option won out, and then that also then preceded 2 more dislocations in that 6-month period. So 3 dislocations before I decided that I should probably go and get someone to have a look at it. Now, some of you, that clinical mind, will look at me going, what an idiot. But that's what rugby players do, right? And you guys will probably see these people in your clinics. So that led me to my first surgery in 2002. Did the rehab. I actually then lived abroad for a few years. So I got back to rugby. I went abroad for a while. And I worked as a professional scuba diving instructor. Anybody got any ideas what the answer to this simple equation is? Scuba diving instructor, spending a lot of time in a hot country with your shirt off equals bench press. That's what we did a lot of because we are literally half naked most of the time. Power of 3 represents the number of times we train chest in a week. All right? So we are constantly doing the beach weight work. Turns out, who'd have known it, that's not very good for stopping your shoulder from dislocating because I came back from Zanzibar where I was working at the time, got back into rugby, dislocated my shoulder again. Went back to the consultant. Consultant says, do some physio. Did some physio. Nailed it. Went back to playing rugby because he said that I could, dislocated my shoulder. Second surgery. All right, so now he goes, right, we're going to go in again. Has anyone had a dislocated shoulder? Surgery? Anybody? Yeah? Can't do anything. It's awful, right? So I can't even get into a back squat position or front squat to be able to train lower body. So for an athletic person who's like living and breathing sport, you literally are sidelined for about 6 months before you can do anything which is actually meaningful. So second time round, I'm like, I'm not doing that again. Terrible experience. I don't want to go down this route because, to be fair to me, all of the physio I'd done in the past hadn't got me to where I wanted to be. And the second time I had the surgery, I was doing my strength and conditioning qualifications. I nailed the rehab, A-star. I was like world class at lying on my back and holding a stability ball in my hand, right? And the physio goes, you can go back and play, but that's a really big jump from doing that exercise to handing off a guy who weighs 100 kilos. So I decided to take matters into my own hands, and my thought experiment was, you're getting a flavor for the sort of person that I am that doesn't go to hospital with a dislocated shoulder and then decides to learn to handstand, because I thought that would be a good idea to give me some confidence that my shoulder was stable. I'm desperate at this point, right? Because all of my basic rehab stuff, and there was nothing wrong with it, but it hadn't got me to where I wanted to be. Now, I am a bit of an all or nothing person, so over the next few years, I got quite good at handstands. And my starting point, when I put my hands on the ground the first time I went to go and try and learn to handstand, I didn't know if my shoulder was going to be all right or not. We got to a point where I can do a human flag. So this left arm here on the bottom is the one which is doing all of the stability work in that shape, right? So you're driving it into that position. I'm pushing hard into the rig and I'm pulling that top arm. my dislocation position would typically have been here. I had dislocated with an unloaded bar doing a snatch balance, and I was going to pop it, and it slipped it through in that shape. So for me to get from where I was to where I am now was game changing. So what did I learn? And this is where I'm going to kind of tee up how we're going to start to help you guys to get better results for your clients. Now this was me. I'm a visual person, so I'm going to give you an analogy. My shoulder dislocation had put me in a pretty awful place. Zero confidence. The rehab that I'd done had got me to the top of the cliff, but as I said in the story, I'd found myself back off into the drink again. Now what I'd done through that experiment around looking for different ways to recondition my shoulder was I'd moved myself away from that cliff edge. And in doing so, I'd given myself a huge amount of bandwidth to be able to play with. When we're talking about sports like rugby or CrossFit, this is the stuff which is important because those environments are chaos. Right? We don't know what's going to come up on a workout. Does anyone do CrossFit? Yeah, I like a little bit of CrossFit. I'm not going to have a go at it. I like it. But it's carnage, right? You can walk into the box and it might be someone's put on the board that we're going to do 100 snatches. And we're just going to start just wrenching that bar. That's the sort of, and you might not even know what that workout's going to be until you rock up in a box, right? They keep it as a surprise to make sure that people turn up. In rugby, it's the same thing. You can't control the variables. You don't want to be going into contact worrying about where you're going to put that shoulder. So we have to get good at managing chaos. And I'd never really been exposed to any level of high amounts of chaos under intensities that were replicable to what it was that I was going to do with my shoulder. I'd actually re-dislocated the final time, right? So I had my second surgery, went snowboarding, last run of the day, come down, I hit a kicker. It's not a big one, but I hit it really badly and it ended up flying through the air in this position. Hit the ground and slipped it again. So being able to kind of get back to that life was where I wanted to be. Now you might say, you've kind of put that timeline together. We're talking 2002, 2009, somewhere around that. 2012 was my final dislocation. Things have changed. We're way better than we were then. Now I wanted to test this. So we actually went out and surveyed a load of our former clients. So 50 people, some of them spanning back on a 3-year time period. And I wanted to know whether what had changed, what experience was, had we broken that repetitive injury cycle that a lot of our clients have had. And some of them can be coming to us after maybe, we've got clients who've had 10 years of shoulder problems. They've failed rehab on multiple occasions. And it was stemmed from this slide really that I saw, well not this slide, but this statement that someone made at a physio conference that I was at earlier on this year. And they said that if the client never comes back to me, I assume that they've gone on to live a happy and fulfilled life. But I'm there sat there going, being one of those people who've been discharged, thinking there are a number of different reasons why someone might not come back to your clinic. And I wanted to make sure that we weren't also in that same kind of space. So I asked a load of my clients, and this will all make sense in a minute. Have you, when you worked with a practitioner previously, did you get the result that you were looking for? And this is what the numbers look like. Now it's a little bit biased because they probably wouldn't have come to me if they had got the result that they were looking for. So hold my hands up and go, we might have just magically got the 50 odd people who had not got results and everybody else is getting results. It's a possibility, right? But then I asked them, since working with us, have you also then had to go and seek support from another practitioner? Because I wanted to do the Adam Grant thing and rethink and check, am I actually just ignoring what's staring me in the face by not taking the time to reflect? Now these are the numbers this time. Get us to click through. The numbers flipped a little bit. Now I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I wanted to know what that 9.5% was, and we've got quite good relationships with our clients, so we had followed them with that journey. 2 of them have gone on for further medical intervention, so they've gone for an exploration. One of the guys had a surgery, and 2 of the others were like old boy CrossFitters who like to sports massage every now and again because they've been around the block a few times and generally were pretty banged up. So I then said to them, right, okay, so this is what you've told us so far. Was there something that we did that was different to what you'd experienced before? 100% of people said yes. Now this is a bit I want you to take away. This is kind of the major part. I asked them then, what was that? It's an open answer. We've got 3,000 words worth of response, and then we summarized it into some key themes. And as a bit of a spoiler, none of these relate to which type of external rotation exercise we gave them in the gym. So these are the bits to take away and think about how do you implement some of this stuff into your current practice. So The first one, go back one. I've got one too many. First one, coaching. The narrative from the responses talked about that having that person who's going to walk with them on that journey, to go side by side, to individualize, customize, to be able to support them when we inevitably get some of those fluctuations that we always see in that rehab journey. Now, coming at this from a strength and conditioning perspective, my question is, why do we coach performance, but we prescribe rehab? Rehab's way, way harder than performance. But when I'm in a strength and conditioning environment, I might see my athletes 3 times a week. We can change and adapt training programs to get different stimulus. If something's too easy or too hard, we can progress it. We can give them cues on their exercise execution, on technique, and thereby continue to keep things moving forwards. Now, when I look at that, and again, coming from an outsider's perspective into therapy, I'm going, why do we do this thing where we give people 3 exercises, and we sometimes give them handouts or not, and then we send them off and tell them to come back in 2 or 3 weeks? Meanwhile, an athletic person has been in the gym. They are chomping at the bit to get back into this scenario, right? So it's not like they're going to go home and they're not active. They are waiting to find out when they can get back to doing what they want to be able to do. What if those exercises haven't been quite right? What if they found them difficult? Well, the biggest problem we have, right, is people actually doing the exercises in the first place. So there's no support within that. Potentially, I'm going to put out as an option. The second one was around this collaborative and integrated approach. I'll touch on this in a little while. But we will have that combination between strength and conditioning and physiotherapy. So when people come through to us to begin with, depending on their starting point, they'll have a physiotherapy consultation. We're going to go and do all of the red flags, the medical screening to make sure they're the right fit. And in some cases, relatively regularly, we're referring out if they aren't the right people for us. We want to work with the athletic population and be very confident we can get the results for them. So our clients reported back that they valued those 2 angles, those 2 representations of how are we going to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. And because some of them are coming in with some previous experiences around their therapy, seeing that journey actually goes a little bit further to being able to do something which is closer to what they want to be able to do was really significant. Number 3, continued support and education, or comprehensive. We go to quite a lot of measures to make sure that when people finish the programs with us, that they have 3 to 5 things, whatever it might be, that they're going to do in the long term to look after the shoulder. When you've had 2 surgeries and 6 dislocations, my left shoulder just benefits from a little bit of additional TLC to your average shoulder. So making sure they leave the process with something to keep themselves away from the cliff edge is really important. In the process, can we change their training philosophy? Can we introduce them to new methods or ways of training? Can we get them away from bench pressing 3 times a week and get them onto using gymnastics rings? Because that is going to be a super beneficial way for me to get more positive ticks in a box with the shoulder. Can we tell them why they're doing what they're doing? Because for an athletic population, I don't know if you guys feel that you get this with your clients or not, or patients. My guys ask me all the time, why am I doing that? How does it work? They're used to following programs. The general athletic population now are very well educated around strength and conditioning principles to a point of what they need to know from a general practice. So if we can share with them why you're doing it, how it fits in, what impact it's going to have based on where you are now and where you want to be, my argument is that adherence goes through the roof because we've created value around our training program prescription. The next one is this tailored and individualized approach or programming. Whether we like to admit it or not, and we are like heavily on the individualization approach, we get better results, and I'll show you a second research project in a second which backs this up. But we get better results when clients think that the program is individualized and tailored, because they, in their world, have got a unique problem which requires a unique approach. Now, we are always probably going to prescribe similar exercises, but if it comes through in a very generic format, we are potentially going to lose confidence and trust, which is a super important part of people moving to a better place. They also want to see accountability and progress monitoring. Do you guys use dynamometers in your clinics, like tracking data? We can give people numbers these days, yeah, in like an athletic population. We use the VALS system. So if we're testing cuff strength, we can straight away go in an assessment. This is what your shoulder is telling us from a data perspective. Now, for an athletic type population that are used to looking at weights on bars and progressions and PBs, that data screams volumes for us. It gives them a target. They might be type A people. It gives them something to chase, and they want to see that those numbers change and improve. Again, builds adherence to the training program and creates value and that sense of accomplishment when they come back in and retest. And the final one, before I bring in a second angle on this one, is that the focus on long-term solution. Put myself back in that situation, having been through around a decade of problems. I don't want to go back into that again. So how is what we're doing right now going to help me and equip me so that I don't find myself back in the same situation in the future? Now, I also then wanted to cross-reference this against a published piece of research, because you can go, this is like informal, it's not a proper project, it's just your opinion and your clients, right? So some of you that have done some reading around shoulders would have come across a guy called Jared Powell, doing quite a lot of published research, puts out some really good content. Well, they did a study which was titled Restoring That Faith in My Shoulder. It's definitely worth a read. And what they looked at was the conditions in a clinical context which were going to either impede or enhance the type of outcomes and the improvements that clients could make who've got rotator cuff related shoulder pain. So what we deliver and how we deliver it, how do those things, or what are those things that matter which are going to get people by the better or potentially worse results? Now, the things that they talked about, they identified three key conditions within the context of this study. So the first one was having a strong therapeutic relationship. This won't be new news for you guys because we'll have talked about the importance of this biopsychosocial approach. But have we got empathy, trust, respect, confidence? How do those things weigh into the conversation? Because that is, again, going to have a big impact. If we've got an athletic person coming in who doesn't have confidence or doesn't have a good relationship, then the research paper suggested that they could potentially expect to have poor motivation and lack of adherence to the training program. It goes right back to what I was saying before, as the best way to get people the best results is for them to do the training program consistently and progressively. So we can tick that off with having that relationship. Again, exercise program came up, so directly correlated to what we found. But again, they talk about in the paper the importance of it feeling and looking like an individualized training program, because that, again, builds confidence, adherence, and motivation in the training program, or into the process. And then the final one in this study was around timely clinical progress. People want to see change. They want to feel stronger, they want to get less pain, they want more function, they want to see some results from the work they're putting in, just like Shrek. And that is, again, going to continue to motivate them and give them the confidence that they are moving in the right direction. So the question here is, feel free to take a shot of that slide. But if you go back to how you're delivering what you're delivering and ask, how are we fitting those things in? Because I didn't put any words in the guy's mouths when I asked this one. I literally just said to him, tell us what we did that was different and what made a difference. And this is what they came back with. So I look at that and go, it doesn't matter whether we're doing, it does matter, right? If we're doing shoulder strengthening work or whatever, what positions and patterns, progressions we use, exercise selection matters as part of a structured, individualized and tailored training program. So the critical piece in there is to look at what you're doing and how we could optimize it. Now this is, I hope this person's handwriting is not here in the room, because I'm going to just give a little critique. This was what one of my clients genuinely showed me. This guy had shoulder surgery. And he comes in, he shows me this, and he says, this is what my physio told me to do. Is anyone a strength and conditioning coach here? Strength and conditioning coach? No. From my perspective, this is difficult to look at. There's no reps, there's no sets, there's no intensity, there's no regression or progression. I don't know if I'm supposed to do all of those exercises or just some of them, in what order and in what combinations. There may well be some very good exercises there, but is that going to tick the boxes of what we just looked at in terms of what the research is telling us is going to be important? Now I'm going to bring this through with a little bit of just some thoughts of my own around what else we can consider from a contextual perspective for an athletic population. So other things to think about. Environment. Why do we put athletic people in a rehab environment as opposed to putting rehab in an athletic environment? This is where a lot of my guys spend their time, and yours will be the same. Commercial gyms are becoming more and more CrossFit type orientated. We see more functional rigs. There'll be more people doing Olympic weightlifting type patterns in mainstream gyms. If they're not in a CrossFit box or something that looks like that, they might find themselves in something that looks a little bit more like this. Gyms are changing, and what people are doing in gyms is changing. Now I spend my time here, and then when I'm broken and I need to go and see somebody, we go here. Now I walk into that environment and go, well, what am I supposed to do in here? Yes, there is a role for this type of intervention or this stage in the process, but it's not a comfortable place for me to be. This screams, what can't you do? It doesn't tell me what I can do. I'm not around my usual equipment, and I don't feel like that I'm usually in my space where I'm with my community, my people. Now, when I did my shoulder rehab, the physio would say to me, get on the couch, we do our things or whatever, and now we're going to go through to the gym. And I'm like, sweet, let's go to the gym. I'm like, okay, this is not my gym. Again, where's the things that I'm used to doing which tells me that there's hope and there's a way forwards for me to be able to progress? Environment matters with an athletic population. The second one, teamwork, and you've probably got this thread as it comes through already. We are intentionally and strategically an integrated service. I need physiotherapists to make sure that I'm not missing anything and that we've got the best support and guidance to get people from where they are to where my specialism picks in, which is in that more of a late stage type rehabilitation. Just as I've said before around building that confidence in the therapeutic relationship, if an athletic person comes in and they've got a physio, the medical side, and they can also see somebody who's going to go and take them into that environment where they want to go and spend their time and give them the specialist knowledge and support to be able to do that, that for me screams, we're going in the right direction. I can see where this journey is going to go. And Gene Morsher, who is a baseball player and manager, said that you can't lead anyone further than you've gone yourself. And as I said, I know that from both spectrums. That's why we've got both disciplines in our team. So we start our process with all of our clients by asking this question. If we were to get you a 5-star outcome, what does success look like? If I know the answer to that question, then I can reverse engineer the process of where they are now and to where they want to be. Just like we would do in a performance support sports environment where we are planning a 4-year Paralympic cycle, the conversation we would have with the swimmers that I used to work with would be, what time do we need to swim in 4 years' time to get a gold medal or to PB? And we look at what they're swimming now and what time they need to swim, and we go and break down what can we do to change the performance so that we can hit that target. So for me with an athletic population, my call to action for you guys today is like, where do we get the right people around that person? Because we see it from the clients that we work with, but this was my own experience where the physio took me as far as she could. And it wasn't bad physio, it was good physio. But it wasn't far enough given what success was going to look like for me, which was a return to rugby and to be able to do a snatch to pass my UK strength and conditioning assessments. I needed someone to take me that little bit further. So ask the question, who are these people? What do they need? Where are they spending their time? Who are the people that we can put around them? And my final quote here, I was going to bring this into land from Adam Grant, is that he just recognizes that we often become attached to what we would define as best practices. To look at it critically from a coaching angle into a therapy conversation, do we do it because it's always been done like that? Do we have this clinic setting and this clinic environment and 40-minute appointments? Is it or just because it's always been like that? Or is it the best way to deliver that support? Because he says that the risk is that once we define something as the best, it just stays frozen in time. And the example that he uses is that you would laugh at somebody who's still using Windows 95 as their operating system, but there'll be loads of people that are holding on to practices that we established around the same time period. So, as a takeaway, how do we move people further away from the cliff edge? If you were to ask me, and you might say that I'm biased because I don't come from a physio or a therapy background, I'm coming at this from a strength perspective. But how do we get people further away from the cliff edge? Shoulders are complicated. I'm the only person, I think, talking about shoulders here today, which will tell you a lot about where people are investing their attention. Because it's the same everywhere we go. Everyone talks about ankles and knees and hips and squats. Not many people talk about the shoulders. the shoulder needs something different. I think we are guilty in many cases of applying lower body thinking to upper body training. Apart from being a ball and socket joint, they are entirely different in terms of their function, their design, and then how we use them. So to get an athletic population to a better place, to get game-changing results, which is how I kind of preface this whole conversation, one of the key things is what can we do, that list of things, and how do we move people. If what I've said has been useful or interesting and you want to chat more, we are always looking for people to collaborate with and connect with, because we recognize that it takes more than one person to get the result. Our contact details are there. Feel free to follow us on Instagram, where we put out a ton of content. I appreciate you turning up and spending some time. Thank you.